Karpowership has been granted access to the ports of Ngqura, Durban and Saldanha Bay for the next 20 years by the Department of Transport. Now, this comes as the corporation weighs its options in South Africa following quite a number of setbacks to its proposed gas-to-power projects. So to discuss this even further, I'm now joined by OUTA Executive Director, Advocate Stefanie Fick this morning. Advocate Fick, thank you so much for making time for us this morning. I suppose your reaction upon this announcement, Karpowership having been given access, I suppose, to these different ports, 3 of them, Saldanha Bay, Durban, Ngqura, this for the next 20 years by the Department of Transport.
Really boggles the mind. As an organization, good morning, by the way. As an organization, we took NERSA to court like 3 years ago when this whole thing started, because they gave them distribution licenses without, in our view, taking a lot of things into account. But it appears, and now with this whole port giving access to port for the next 20 years, it is really, as an organization, we cannot understand why this deal just gets pushed forward. Yes, we are all in the dark. Let's accept that we all want power, and we want Eskom to fix the fact that we do not have enough available electricity. But Karpowership is not the answer. It's a 20-year deal. Nothing 20 years is emergency procurement. That's like a lifelong, we're going to sit with this. It is so expensive. When they started with this, it was 200 billion rand. That was before the Ukraine war. That's before our rand collapsed against the dollar and the pound. We are talking about 500 billion rand. And then we are not talking about the fact that there will probably not be any job creation. It's bad for the environment, and it's not plug and play. It will take them, at least, if Brazil is anything to go by, another year in order to be ready to supply electricity for one stage.
Do you think there are questions to be asked about why it was also granted for the duration of 20 years? Is that also, problematic? A point of why so long? Why exactly is the deal for 20 years?
Yeah, exactly. It is. Again, 20 years is not an emergency procurement. But if you, for example, if you listen to what is out there, for example, the Minister of Finance has said he's fully behind Minister Mantashe for procuring this deal. But why 20 years? So they are talking about, maybe we should cut the deal and maybe we should make it shorter, which may be better if you look at it. But you know what? Then the gas is going to be even more expensive. So if you are talking about 500 billion rand, what are we talking about? As South Africans, we simply cannot afford it. This emergency was created by government. They should open up the grid and make way for more renewables. And I think, let's say, we can, in the shorter term, not fix the whole problem, but at least get more electricity on the grid without looking at contracts that's this expensive.
I'm raising this question as well, Advocate, because previously had raised concerns as OUTA that the state of disaster in electricity could have been, used to push through this deal with Karpowership. So if this is not going to end load shedding, if it's not in the best interests of South Africans, if it's not suitable for South Africa, then whose interests is it serving? That's the big question. Whose interest is it serving? Because South Africans want load shedding to end. They want a solution rather carved nichely for our problems in the country. But if this is not it, then who's it serving?
You can always think what you want. We cannot always say what we want. It is, in South Africa, let me just say this, without people, maybe suing me for defamation, and just between you and me, that is exactly what's happening in Brazil, where some of the activists are being sued for just being honest. But in South Africa, unfortunately, looking at state capture, looking at what's happening at Eskom, the sheer amount of corruption, and the sabotage and the fraud and the theft, is one has to wonder, if someone out there is not benefiting. And it's surely not South Africa. Can we not? Can I put this out there? Can not spent the same amount of energy? We are spending in absolutely trying to push this deal through. Take that energy and try and fix Eskom, try and get rid of the corruption, trying to get rid of the sabotage, and then look at what the grid needs. I mean, we don't even have an IEP, to make sure that, and without fighting for renewables, but we are part of the just transition. We need alternative electricity. And I think if we really think about it and don't get stuck in, the more expensive versions of electricity, there is a solution that will ensure that South Africans in the short term will have more electricity available.
I'll leave it there with you. Thank you so much for talking to me. Wish you had more time. Advocate Stefanie Fick from OUTA, the Executive Director, weighing in on the Karpowership deal that's been granted by the Department of Transport. We understand it being a 20-year deal for the ports of Ngqura in Durban as well as Saldanha Bay. And that's, of course, coming into effect after that announcement by the department.